Welcome and thank you for standing by. At this time, all participants are on a listen-only mode. Today's webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be posted publicly. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. Now I'd like to turn the call over to your host, Yara McSweeney.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Your Tribal Nation by the Numbers, Accessing American Indian and Alaska Native Statistics. My name is Yara McSweeney, and I am a program analyst at the Census Bureau. I want to thank you for joining us today at the Back to Data Basics webinar series. This webinar series was created by the Census Academy team here at the Census Bureau. You can register for any of the webinars by visiting census.gov/academy. Before I introduce today's speaker, I just want to go over a few housekeeping items. As mentioned earlier, this webinar is being recorded. For your convenience, it will be posted to our Census Academy site within 30 business days. We'll post all supplemental materials, including the PowerPoint slides. In terms of how to ask questions during the webinar, you could submit your written questions using the Q&A panel, which is at the bottom center or the right side of your WebEx screen. Please take a moment now to locate that. Once you found the Q&A panel, make sure you choose All Panelists from the drop-down menu. This will ensure we see your question. Also, we ask that you do not include any personal or business identifiable information with your questions. My colleagues, Amadeo Shihei and Kim Brown, will be monitoring the Q&A panel. As time allows, they will answer your questions directly through the Q&A panel, or they will read them out loud to our presenter after her presentation. For any questions that are not answered, feel free to contact us at the contact information we'll provide later. Now let's talk about the chat panel. Look for it right next to the Q&A panel. You want to keep that chat panel open because this is where we will provide helpful links and other resources. Keep in mind, you won't be able to respond to the chat. Chat is just for us to send you links, including our evaluation. As you all know, we are in a virtual environment and sometimes technical difficulties might occur. If you are having issues, try a different browser or consider logging out and coming back into the session. Lastly, throughout the webinar, a link where you can tell us how we did today will be provided in the chat. We are very, very interested in hearing how we are doing. All right, so with all of those administrative items out of the way, I now like to introduce today's speaker, Kim Davis. Thanks again for being here, Kim. The floor is yours.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this Census Academy presentation, Your Tribal Nation by the Numbers. I am your presenter today, and my name is Kimberly Davis, and as Yara mentioned, I am with the Census Bureau. I've been with the U.S. Census Bureau since 2008. I worked during the decennial census program in the Denver region on the partnership outreach program. And currently, I work with the Census Bureau in the data dissemination and outreach under the Customer Liaison and Marketing Service team. I still reside in Denver, Colorado, and report to headquarters in Suitland, Maryland. The areas that I typically cover geographically are Colorado, Montana, Utah, and Wyoming. And I work with all the tribal nations on a special program we have at the Census Bureau, collaborating our efforts between divisions. So today, our learning objective for the participants is to have a better understanding about the data for the American Indian and Alaska Native populations, tribal geography, what data is available, and how to access data for the AIN populations and tribal areas. The agenda will follow. Will be an overview of the Census Bureau with the Census 101. We'll then navigate census.gov in a live demonstration looking for tribal data. I'll provide some additional resources and information, and we'll wrap up, as Yara said, with a Q&A session. So Census 101, what do we do at the Census Bureau? I think most people know that we at the Census Bureau collect the population and housing count every 10 years for the United States and the U.S. territories. But in addition to that decennial census, we do two other censuses. We do an economic census, and we do a census of government. When we do the economic census, it's the largest and most comprehensive data about the economy, and the the census of governments complements the economic census, where we gather information about government, which includes the creation of governments and the finances of the government. So combined, these two censuses are conducted every 5 years, and they are conducted in years that end in 2s and 7s. In addition to the 3 censuses, we have many ongoing programs at the Census Bureau. We have more than 100 surveys and programs that include information about how we're living in America and the businesses and economy. Of those ongoing programs that we have, we conduct collections bi-weekly, weekly, monthly, and annually. So we have a lot going on, so we are current with the data we provide as well as accurate, and we provide data at a variety of geographies that we'll look at today as well. We have other programs at the Census Bureau where we provide data from. One of those is the population estimates, where we gather data from the local governments. And the population estimates are the official counts of the population that come out annually. And this is done by a baseline from the decennial census, and then we add births, subtract deaths, and add and subtract migration in and out of areas. For more information about what we do at the Census Bureau, you can click on the link that's included in this slide. In addition to what we do at the Census Bureau, I think it's really important that I point out the Census Bureau operates under U.S. Code Title 13 and 26. And what that means is that we cannot publish data in a capacity that a person's identity or a business's identity may be compromised. So we ensure that the identity of persons and businesses is not compromised under the operation of Title 13 and 26. All right, I want to talk about geography and why it matters at the Census Bureau. As the gatekeepers of geography, geography is central to the work that we do at the Census Bureau. It provides framework for the survey designs, sample selections, data collections, and tabulations, as well as framework for us to disseminate data in. It essentially gives us context to the meaning of the statistical data. We have a dedicated division at the Census Bureau that works with partners to collect geographic data about their boundaries, including annexation, to ensure that we have the most up-to-date geographic areas and addresses. We develop standards and manage governmental unities. And administrative and statistical boundaries to meet obligations to the Federal Geographic Data Committee. We digitize spatial updates to the master address file known as MAF in our Tiger system, and we process and geocode millions of addresses. So displaying on the slide is the geographic hierarchy chart. And this shows how the Census Bureau organizes geography. So I want to talk about this a minute and what it means, because it's not always easy to understand. The items from the nation down the center line to the census blocks are geographies that nest within the ascending geography above it. So these geographies are used for redistricting, and these geographies only change once every 10 years. So within these geographies, over to the right, you see some boxes with information. The census tracts are where we begin that redistricting and reestablishing census tracts. Census tracts are important because we produce a lot of data from in that geographic level from the American Community Survey, and it's comparable to a neighborhood. You can see in the blue box the thresholds or the guidelines we try to follow to determine the size of those tracts. And nesting within those tracts are the census blocks, census blocks nest within block groups, and blocks are not defined by a specific population, but they tend to follow boundaries that exist, however, like waters or roads or railroad tracks. Decennial data is the only data we provide at that very low level, at the census block level, but you can find ACS data and decennial data at both block groups and census tracts. Another geography that I really think is valuable to this group is understanding place level geography. So places are everything that are cities and towns and something we call a census designated place, a CDP, which a CDP is a statistical geographic entity representing a town or a city, but it doesn't meet the qualifying factors that a city and town do, which include a voting board and a head of the organization. You'll find a number of CDPs in tribal geographies, and we do provide mapping for the data so you can identify those geographic boundaries. And I also want to point out on this chart, if you look to the right of the chart, you can see a line from the census blocks up to the American Indian, Alaska Native, Native Hawaiian areas. We do provide specific data for the tribal areas. So let's talk a little bit about that, because we're going to look at some of that data today as well. For the tribes, there are two ways we look at this. We have both legal and statistical American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian areas that you'll often see with a very large acronym at the Census Bureau, AIANNHAs. These data overlay all the other geographies at the Census Bureau, so they can cross boundaries outside of the state areas. We contact a representative of a federally recognized American Indian tribal government to identify those areas and reservations. We do that annually during a program called our Boundary and Annexation Survey. BASS is how we, of course, acronym that as well. The legal entities consist of federally recognized American Indian reservations and off-reservation trust lands. We do include the off-reservation trust areas. the tribal subdivisions that divide the tribal areas, and the state-recognized American Indian reservations, Alaska Native Regional Corporations, and Hawaiian homelands. The statistical entities are the Alaska Native Village Statistical Areas, the Oklahoma Tribal Statistical Areas, and the Tribal Designated Statistical Areas, as well as state designated tribal statistical areas. So we provide data in a variety of ways specific for tribal geographies and populations. And we're going to take a look later in a live demonstration at what some of those tribal geographies look like. In particular, we'll look at tribal census tracts, which are very different than a regular census tract. These nest only within tribal areas, and they are identified with a T preceding the number, and that's how you'll know the difference between a regular census tract and a tribal tract. All right, let's talk a little bit about the history of race and ethnicity at the Census Bureau. So since the first census, the United States decennial census in 1790, and over each subsequent decade, the decennial census has collected information on race and ethnicity. And the census forms have reflected contemporary circumstances and social changes throughout our nation's history. This link that you see here on this slide will take you to a chart that shows the changes over time from the 1860 to the 2010 census for collection on race and history. For example, when you're on that chart, and I didn't want to show it today because it's very detailed, and I believe the print would be too small, so I just snapshotted a little information. When you hover over a year, what information it shows. And in 1860, census takers were instructed to enumerate only American Indian who were taxed. More details can be found on the link about the changes and how we've evolved to show full race and ethnicity, and how we continue to research it today to evolve with the changes that we experience in society. So the way that we organize the data we collect for race and ethnicity is by following the Office of Management and Budget, known as OMB's standard. They are the ones that set a policy for the definitions, and there are a minimum category that we collect on an ongoing basis, which are 6 race categories and an ethnicity standard. The data is reported for these race and the ethnicity. OMB, as I said, defines it, and then when they define it, they have 2 separate concepts for this. Hispanic or Latino is considered an ethnicity, and people of Hispanic or Latino origin may be of any race group. The collection is always based on self-identification, with the option to identify as some other race if persons identifying don't see any that they believe they qualify for. In the example here on the right, this is the American Community Survey, and I wanted to show this one because it's such valuable data, how we ask questions. So you'll see here in question 5 from the ACS, we ask, what is a person's ethnicity? And then we ask, what is a person's race? Because you can be of any race and have the Hispanic or Latino ethnicity. For more information about the standards for race and ethnicity, you can go to the link that's included on this slide for the details. All right, I want to talk a little bit more about the American Community Survey. It's one of the surveys in the over 100 surveys that we collect data from. And the reason I want to talk about the American Community Survey a little bit is it provides such valuable data, but it also provides data annually at a number of geographic areas. So some of the things that are important to talk about in the ACS are that it does have a data available for tribal areas, such as tracts and tribal subdivisions, and it shows really how we're living. It gives that characteristic information. It helps us determine where funding goes for more than $675 billion that is allocated in federal and state funding. And it also is used to identify federal, state, and local programs to assist tribal governments. The ACS is a self-response, which means the Census Bureau does not assign American Indian or Alaskan Native affiliation to respondents. Rather, we have respondents define their own race and state their affiliated tribe. So it's very important that we understand as data users it's self-identification, not tribal enrollment numbers provided from the tribes. Respondents who identify themselves as American Indian or Alaska Native are asked to report enrolled or principal tribe. So we ask, who do you affiliate yourself with, what tribe? Therefore, the tribal data in tabulations is reflected by the written entry of the respondent. So it is, again, that's just reiterating that it is self-response that we collect. When we collect data for the ACS, the American Community Survey, we do it in 3 modes. So we collect data over a 3-month period, and we do it by a paper questionnaire through the mail. We can do it by an internet for internet responses, and we do personal Census Bureau interviews. We conduct a special procedure that exists for the sampling rates on AIAN areas. It reallocates the sample with the goal to produce even more quality data amongst these smaller geographic areas. And so we have a higher overall sample size to increase that participation rate. And we also increase the attempt in personal visit interviews to increase response rate. And we do that in comparison to how we conduct the ACS in other areas. Again, the goal is to increase participation and then increase the quality of our numbers, and we have a lower than margin of error. So why is all of it this important? Why is it important to understand geography and the difference between geography and the tribal populations? Well, it's important because you can look here on the left at the United States population for 2020, and you can see here the race alone populations for American Indian and Alaska Native, as well as Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islanders, is different than it is on the right, which is specific to the tribal areas. These are the same population grouping tables, but different geographies. On the left, it's the United States. On the right, it is all of the American Indian areas, Alaska Native areas, and Hawaiian homeland areas within the United States. So it's important when you're researching data to understand the difference between the population group and the geography. Now we're going to take a minute and we are going to navigate the Census Bureau, or we're going to look at accessing some of the data and navigate a few of the tools for grabbing this data. I want to share with you, we've had some updates and refreshes on the census.gov website if you haven't been on it recently. We're always looking to update and make our tools and data more accessible to the public. So this is what the new homepage looks like. And it isn't always easy to understand what you're looking at when you open the Census Bureau homepage, which is census.gov. But I want to point out that there is a global search in the upper right-hand corner that allows users to type a subject or a geography or both in there, and it will give you a return and start auto-populating lists of things you may be interested in or that may connect with the topic or geography you've entered. We are trying to make it a little more friendly, a little more global smart searching. The next way that you can search for data is in the top banner. There are some subject tabs in bold print. One is the topics. If you're not familiar with the data at the Census Bureau, this is a good place to start to see what subjects we have information on. It has the most frequently searched listed and opportunity for you to look at a drop-down list of A to Z. Then the next easy way to look for data is using the Data and Map tab tool. And we're going to dig into that one a little bit today, but it lists the data products and tools along with mapping tools that contain the actual information. If you're really new to census data, a helpful resource is to start at the Survey and Programs tab. I recommend looking at the Survey and Programs tab because it directs you what data is collected for particular programs and surveys that we do if you're not familiar where data came from. Sometimes all of this is still very overwhelming. So the Census Academy staff developed a tool called Census Survey Explorer. This is a wonderful way to start searching for data. If you're not sure even what type of geography to type in or what topic, there are drop-down menus, or you can type in the global search on this page. And the return on the Census Survey Explorer sends you to a page that has data and information about either the topics or the geographies that are available for your search. When you use this tool, I do caution not to be too granular. Don't search for a specific tribal group. You're better to use this tool looking for the type of geography or the type of topic, such as tribal area rather than Navajo Nation specifically, as well as subtopics like race rather than the Navajo Nation people. All right, I made a list. We have 2 pages of data tools and apps at the Census Bureau. And I went through that list and I selected on this slide the tools that are most helpful for accessing American Indian and Alaskan Native population. I indicated if you can find data by the tribal area, or if you can find it by the American Indian or Alaska Native population. So this will be a good reference slide for you to look back on and see where can you find the type of data that you're looking for. So right now we'll go into a live demonstration on census.gov and look at 3 particular data products. We're going to look at My Tribal Area, the American Community Survey Narrative Profile, and we're going to dabble a little bit in our vastly contained Explore Census.gov, where we'll go into data.census.gov. The data.census.gov tool houses most of the data that we put out, including the ACS and decennial information. So let's go over here. Let me get the census homepage pulled up here for everyone. Lisa, let me know if you don't see census.gov. So we're going to start out here on the homepage of census.gov. And because it's new, recently there's a couple of banners here at the top. We alert people about information for emergency management. And here you'll see that we have alerted you there's changes. And yes, this is still the Census Bureau homepage if it looks a little different than what you're used to. So the first item that we're going to look at is going to be the My Tribal Area. And to get to My Tribal Area, we're going to go under the Data and Maps tool. Whoops. I'm sorry, let me go back here. I clicked too far. So I want to go into the Data Tools and Apps, the full list of data tools and apps where we see the two-page list. So here we are, page 1. It's all listed alphabetical, and at the bottom of page 1 is the data product, My Tribal Area. My Tribal Area is also searchable by just typing it in your browser search. This is a landing page of My Tribal Area, and it is designed specifically to look at data within tribal areas. The data provided in My Tribal Area is ACS 5-year, and there are 2 ways you can begin your search in My Tribal Area. So you can type a tribal area in here or search through the drop-down list, or you can filter by a state within here. So I'm going to look in Montana, and then if I select a state, it gives me the tribal areas within the state of Montana. So we're going to look at Blackfeet Indian Reservation. It identifies the Blackfeet Indian Reservation and off-reservation areas. So that you'll get the full geography. It identifies the area on the map below, outlining it in blue. And it begins giving information on 5 topics. The default lands on people. So it gives information from the 2016 to 2020 ACS 5-year. The site will be recognized at the title of the table. And it also, so you can go through the list and it selects the subjects in here. It has information about jobs, also from the ACS 5-year, housing, economy, and education. When you're looking at the data in My Tribal Area, it gives you the estimate as well as the margin of error, how accurate is the data. If that is not important or relevant to you, you can remove that and just look at the estimate in here. And My Tribal Area also has the ability for users to share the data. So you can share it on some social media. You can also download this into a CSV and get the information. And you can embed a widget for My Tribal Area. So you can remember that link and grab it quickly. At the bottom of My Tribal Area is a glossary, and the glossary gives information about the geographic areas, the tribal areas. So there's a better understanding of what's available and what you're looking at in My Tribal Area. This is a great way to grab that quick recent data. We'll look for another release in December for 5-year, and that'll be the 2021. The next data tool I want to share with you is the ACS narrative profile. This one is found in a little different process than under the data and maps because it's specific to ACS 5-year data as well. But to get to it, it's under the surveys and programs and under American Community Survey. And under the American Community Survey, there's information about the survey, but on the left menu, we're going to select data. And from data, we're going to select data tables. And then in the ACS data table list, we're going to select the narrative profile here. The reason that, excuse me, I want to talk to you about the narrative profile is that it is a really easy to understand data tool when you're looking at miles and miles of Excel sheets in our normal data. This breaks it down and gives a comprehensive understanding of the data. It's a wonderful resource if you're writing for grants or applying for funding. It does allow users to look at only a single geography at a time, but you can look at multiple single geographies to do some comparison to see what your area looks like. It's available in multiple geographic selection types. So we're going to select the American Indian, Alaska Native, and Hawaiian homeland area. Once we make that selection, we have the opportunity to select a geographic area within those. And we're going to go to the Ute Mountain in my home state of Colorado. So let's see. Here we are, Ute Mountain Reservation and Off-Reservation Trust Land in Colorado, New Mexico, and Utah. So you can see it's crossing state boundaries. It's getting the entire geographic area. Once I make that selection, it highlights what I've selected and it gives me the opportunity to get that profile. So it's loading it now, and I want to show you what data is available in here because it is so comprehensive. There are 18 subjects available in the narrative profile, and you're welcome to cut and paste the paragraphs as well as the charts from any of the statistics in here. But it gives that written description of what you're looking at in the data tables. It's a very understandable resource. So when we look at this, we can see here in this first subject that there were 552 households in the Ute Mountain Reservation and Off-Reservation Trust Land, and the average household size was 2.86 people. So when you're not sure about the data in the data tables, this is a good way to reference back and see what do those numbers mean and define them. Here you can see the graph that correlates with the paragraph above it. And we can see here that female householders, no spouse or partner present, make up 54.9% of those householders. There's more details in each of the paragraphs of the subject below. And the next data product that we're going to take a look at is the data.census.gov. So let me get over to Census homepage. Whoops, let me go to the homepage and start at the beginning so you know how to get to this. Well, we'll just open it. All right, so here we are at the Census Bureau homepage, and we can go to the Explore Data on the data.census.gov right here, handy on the left. As I said, this is our most prevalent. It houses a lot of the data for ACS and Decennial. It houses all of it. There are a couple ways you can start your search in here. You can start typing in here. It gives suggestions right here of how you can search. But if you're not sure where to begin or even what you want to look at, you just want to explore the data and see what's available, I recommend something called the data profiles. We identify them as the DP tables, data profiles, and hit search. So once I do that, it sends me right into the data tool. It gives a profile because I have not made a selection of a geography on the right side, but it gives a quick description of what the data profiles are. So there's the 04 is housing, the DP03 is for economic characteristics, 05 is the basic demographic and housing. And then prior to that, we had produced the DP2, which we don't have any longer, up to 2000. So let's go ahead and make a geographic selection while we're searching in this data tool. So we know we're going to get a DP, a high-level view of data, and we make our selection by using the filters on the left. So we'll select the geography. The 9 most sought after are listed here at the top, but if you scroll further down, you can see other geographic area types. So we can see here that American Indian area and off-reservation trust land and the Hawaiian homeland areas. We can see the tribal subdivisions and the remainder of, but let's look specifically at a tribal tract. So these are listed alphabetically. So here's tribal census tract. We're going to make that selection. It gives the option then to start filtering by the tribal area, making that selection. And we'll continue on using Blackfeet Nation since we've already identified it in the geography. So we'll go down to B's, and we see the Blackfeet Indian Reservation and off trust land. Now, there's a few things listed here, and I want to talk about why we have a variety in the listing. These are the tribal census tracts, but we started identifying them with a T so that they're different. People can identify that it is not a regular census tract. Since that's a newer way for us to do it, I want to show you what happens looking for that tribal tract when I change the year in geography. If I want to find something more recent like the ACS or decennial, I can select a year, 2020, and I can go to my geography and select my tribal tracts again and go to Blackfeet Nation, and it'll only give me things that are relevant to the more current year. Whoops, it shouldn't have given us all. There we go. It took a minute to provide that. So we can see for the more current geographies, the 2020, it only gives us the T1, 2s, and 3s. So let's select all 3 of those tribal tracts. Now it's narrowing our search down, and we have our 4 selections made with the year and the 4 tracts. And let's go see what we have for our DPs now. So we'll X out of the geography, and we'll click on the tables. Here are our tables that are available for 2020. These are ACS, and it gives those listed with a DP04. I can select the DP03 or 5. So we'll click on the DP04 and look at some selected housing characteristics. A little bit of a lag today here. And here's our table of what we're looking at for those areas. So we have tribal census tract T1, and it gives the characteristics about the housing occupancy, the units within the structure, when was it built, rooms, bedrooms, and so on. When did people move in? How is it heated? All the details about the housing of that area. If I'm not sure where that tribal tract is, that it may not mean anything to me to look at that, I can go up to my header at the top and click on Map. It will identify all 3 of my tribal tracts that I have selected. What shows on the map is the default of the first DP because I didn't make a selection of a particular one, but I can change my variables here. So we're in DP04, and I can map any item that was in that table in those 3 tracts, and it shows my legend here. I can make selections to add other areas in the mapping feature. I can clear all my geos if I want to start over. I can add layers. There are a number of action items that you can change up here in the the action items. One of them that sometimes is helpful in the tribal areas is using a different map view where you can see some of the geographies, the roads, or the lack there of roads, and natural infrastructure like lakes and streams and rivers. All right. I think that sums up everything that I wanted to show you about accessing some tribal data today. I will go ahead and let Amadeo answer any questions that you have. Amadeo? Or Lisa?
Hi, this
Are
is
you?
Kim.
Hi, Kim.
Amadeo may be having trouble with audio.
Okay.
But I can share some questions with you if you'd like to answer a few for us.
Sure. I know we're getting close on time, but yeah.
Yeah. Is there a key to the categories that explains what's in the data profiles?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Like what's in the DP, whether it's social or
DP
economic?
1, 2, 3, 4. They want to know
Yeah.
what the differences are.
Yeah, it gives it in the title what you can find in them. It gives that quick snapshot of those in the title, kind of. It's a very high level because they are a broad overview, but it does say if it's like, for example, we looked at the housing, or there's the demographic, which are the age and race and gender.
Okay, thank you. That's another question for you. For tribal communities, oops, I lost it that quick. For tribal areas that may cross the border to Canada and Mexico, is that information captured as part of the tribe or reservation?
That's a really good question. I'm not familiar with any that do. I believe it's just the reservation, but I will certainly find out. And if whomever asks that wants to share their information, I will respond after I talk with the geography division. I believe it is just for what's in the United States.
Are you aware of tutorials on data for the tribal related data, any of the tribal related data? They're looking for any tutorials.
Tutorials. That's a great question, and I was going to get to that. So I want to share with you this resource that we have at the Census Bureau homepage, which is the Intergovernmental Affairs page. When you go to this page on the Census Bureau, it has information about the program and about data. When you click on that data, you'll find information about the data dissemination. I'm sorry, about the Census Academy program. So the Census Academy is our hub for all the data trainings and resources. That would be where you can look for information. Either of those would direct you to specifically finding data.
Thank you, Kim.
Kimberly, this is Amadeo.
Go ahead, Amadeo.
I having all kinds of technical problems here, but to answer that one question, if you go to census.gov/programs, you should be able to pull up a lot of information about particularly the American Community Survey. And as you scroll down that page, it'll provide you information about almost every ACS program that is currently available.
Thank
Okay,
you,
thank you,
Amadeo.
Amadeo.
Let's see. Another question. In searching my tribal area, the SDTSA for my tribe federally recognized results in a message. The data requested is not currently available. When will this information be available?
So it depends on, we have thresholds, and as I mentioned before, we can't compromise identity. So if it's a federally recognized tribe, then we have the data at those geographic boundaries within that. And if the population is too low in an area that identities may be compromised, some of the data will not show up in the data tables if it's a very low population count that I could identify myself or persons in a household. And I do know that becomes a challenge. You'll see the data from my tribal area is the same as the data in data.census.gov, where they draw those numbers from. They'll be equivalent. So what I recommend when it's not available at that geographic level that you're looking for is perhaps maybe looking at a census tract or a place level that may be compromised or comparable, even though it's not the exact boundary that you're looking for, to get a better idea of those areas.
Thanks, Kim. I got another question for you. In my tribal area, how do you capture off-reservation individuals? And also, how do you capture non-reservation land tribes?
No, okay, so the data is done by the surveys, and all the surveys are done by the location of the persons in their housing for the demographic surveys. So if there are housing in those, then and persons live there, then they are identified by participating in the surveys. And I'm sorry, the second part of that, Kim, could you?
How do you capture non-reservation land tribes?
Non-reservation land tribes.
Yes.
So that if they don't have a tribal geography, then the data would be by the tribal population groups, as well as like in Oklahoma, we have those specific statistical areas that are for those lands, the Oklahoma tribal lands. I hope that answers that question.
Another question was, and I don't know if you or Amadeo can answer this one. I wasn't able to locate it quickly enough. Is there a list of all the tribal, not only the tribes, but the reservations, that they could pull up a list? Now, I was thinking data.census.gov, but maybe they're looking for something outside of the tool. Do we have anything like that?
Yeah, I think Amadeo probably knows better than I do, but I believe in the geography tab under the topics, you can find the list of the type of the geographies, as well as probably in the Tiger web page. The Tiger web tool allows you to look at the types of geography and all geographies.
Yes, Kimberly, that's correct. As you're navigating, searching for information, if you click on the American Indian Alaska Native tab, it'll give you a listing of all the federally recognized tribes in the country. It will not provide you any state recognized, but the federal recognized tribes, it will.
Thanks, Amadeo. Appreciate it. Let's see, one more question before we call it. There are a total of 347 federally recognized Indian tribes within the contiguous 48 states and 227 federally recognized tribal entities within the state of Alaska. that comprise the 574 federally recognized Indian tribes of the United States. Do you have a table or file list of all the tribes? Now, we just talked about the list of the federally recognized tribes, but do we have any other lists available that would list everything that they might require? Little bit
Yeah,
different question.
Yeah, but that is a little, I believe in the geography division that they will have that. And one of the things that we do is we define those tribal geographies, which you can find on My Tribal Area, and it defines all the types of tribal geographies. And so you can look at the various types, like the state level and the federal level. But I believe in the geography division, we can extract that from the files in the geography Tiger Web.
All righty. Thank you, Kim. I will pass it back to Yara.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you, Kim, for a great presentation. We also like to thank everybody that played a role in today's webinar. And also, of course, thank you, our audience, for spending your time with us this afternoon. We would like for you to take a moment to fill out our evaluation, which is provided in the link in the chat. We hope that you let us know not only what we can improve on, but what you enjoy from this session. Look out for the recording and the PowerPoint in Census Academy by visiting census.gov/academy. We also want to remind you of our last webinar in this series, Veteran Data by the Numbers, which is taking place on Thursday, September 29 at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That will bring us to a close. So we thank you again, and we hope you all have a great afternoon. Thank you.
This concludes today's webinar. Thank you for your participation. You may disconnect at this time.